Hey everybody, movie reviewer next door here, and I'm back with another review. This time I'm starting off my 500 subscriber special. So thank you first off to everybody who's been supporting me. And even though I don't get a ton of comments on each video, thank you to the frequent commenters. Um, but I'm starting a series for you guys, even though I just got off the Mission Impossible series. Um, for 500 subs, and I'm hoping this will be an interesting one to revisit. And I'm starting with the Nightmare on Elm Street series with A Nightmare on Elm Street. This is a 1984, this is a horror, a supernatural horror thriller film directed by Wes Craven from 1984, and it stars Heather Langenkamp, John Saxon, Ronnie Blakely, Amanda Wyss, Sue Garcia, Johnny Depp, and Robert Englund. In this film, teenagers in a small town are dropping like flies, apparently in the grip of mass hysteria causing their suicides. A cop's daughter, Nancy Thompson, traces the cause to child molester Freddy Krueger, who was burned alive by angry parents many years before. Krueger has now come back in the dreams of his killer's children, claiming their lives as his revenge. Nancy and her boyfriend Glenn must devise a plan to lure the monster out of the realm of nightmares and into the real world. At least, also, the child molester thing isn't right. He is a child killer, at least in this one. But what did I think of A Nightmare on Elm Street? Well, while not perfect, I do still think it rightfully has the title of classic. I think in order to be a classic, it doesn't mean that you're like perfect and everything, but you leave a lasting impression and you're iconic like the Nightmare on Elm Street series is. And I do think this series is pretty damn iconic. But let me get to the cast. Heather Langenkamp plays Nancy Thompson. I think Heather in this film is fine. And I say fine because this is clearly an early role for her when she was just getting into acting. And not that and I do think her acting gets better as the films go on, to the point where she gives a pretty great performance, I thought, in New Nightmare, from what I remember. And I think she's fine here. She works, but earlier in the film there are some really weird line readings, some really weird inflections. Sometimes she doesn't like express the right emotion for what face she's giving or what she's supposed to express. And she's still a decent enough final girl, but I much prefer her as a final girl in the third film and or as like a heroine in the third film and the in New Nightmare. John Saxon plays uh, Donald Thompson, who's basically a police lieutenant. John Saxon is an actor that I've never really gotten super big on. I don't think he's a bad actor. It's just that he's kind of stiff in this. A lot of weird bits in the acting. Ronnie Blakely plays Marge Thompson, who is Nancy's mother. Um, she also, like, these three in the film are, like, so weird. Like, they act weird sometimes and it doesn't fully work. It's not like she gives a bad performance, it's just odd. Amanda Wyss plays Tina Gray, who is a friend of Nancy's, who is one of the first to be claimed. Um, well, I'll get to that. Uh, but Amanda Wyss, I think, is pretty good for the most part. None of her acting really, like, came off as, like, horrible to me. Again, she's not in a lot of the movies, so maybe that's part of it. Sue Garcia plays Rod Lane. He's the guy that's like the murder of Tina is pinned on him. I think he does a pretty good job in this. In this film, he's credited as Nick Corey because I guess they thought people wouldn't be able to say Sue that well because of how it's spelled. But I think he was fine. He's the worst actor in the film though. He's very like come on, you know I didn't kill her. Like he overdoes a lot of stuff. Um, Johnny Depp plays Glenn Lance, who is Nancy's boyfriend. I think he was fine. He didn't really do a lot though. But then again, this is one of his first uh big role, one of his first roles he's introduced in this film, kind of in the way that Friday the 13th Kevin Bacon was introduced. Robert Englund plays Freddy Krueger. Everybody knows Freddy Krueger, even if you've never seen the films, you know who the fuck Freddy Krueger is. Robert Englund, very creepy in this role, can even get a chuckle out of you. I think that's a pretty big feat when you're both funny and scary at the same time. But here's the thing. This film, many people have labeled this one of the greatest horror films of all time. Now, I have a hard time agreeing with a statement like that because not everybody's taste in horror is the same. Some people are more into supernatural, some people are more into slashers, some people are more into artsy like A24 stuff. And while I do like Hereditary, I'm not into most A24 horror films. Um, but with this, would I say it's one of the best horror films I've ever seen? No. Would I say it's incredibly entertaining? Yes. I think this is a film that knows exactly what pace to go at because I was never bored. I was expecting like, oh, maybe I'll be like feel like some of these parts are a bit slow. Literally every scene in this movie either teaches you something about the backstory of a character, lets you know more about other characters, or is plot relevant. So it's a movie that doesn't waste its time dilly-dallying about like not giving you the actual movie. It actually just works. It goes for it, and I'm happy for that. I love that's one of the things I can give a lot of 80s slashers is that they don't waste time. Like The Prowler, for example. Incredible kills in that movie. Uh a pretty interesting villain. Uh some interesting bits of like comedy that actually did work quite well, I thought. And you have a fun final girl. And it never really felt like it went on too long. That's part of the appeal, I think, of 80s slashers is that even if you're not into like super long movies, you can watch like an hour and a half slasher and get like a full on mystery and all that and get some cool kills sometimes. And I think that's what you get here. You get exactly what you want. You get imaginative kills. You get a very memorable villain, even though in this you don't see a lot of Freddy. You get a main character that you want to survive. I think Heather Langenkamp, while her acting is not amazing in this, she makes her character likable. You want Nancy to get out of this. You don't want Freddy to hurt her, which is what you want in a slasher. And which is why I kind of refuse to go to a lot of like early 2000s slashers because that was kind of the era of like making everything punk or like cool. And by cool, they mean just making a bunch of jackass characters that you want to die and that you want the slasher killer to kill, which is not what you should want in a slasher. But um with this, again, I found the characters likable, which is good. I found Freddy again to be a very interesting villain, um, with a very cool backstory. I think the backstory and how they explain it. I don't want to give away all of the backstory, but um, well, I kind of gave away a little bit of it, but like it was something at the time that hadn't really been done before, like a slasher, but like this was around when the slasher boom was like dying down, like after the early 80s. And Wes Craven was like, you know what? Let's have it be somebody killing people within their dreams, like this. I think it was Taiwanese thing where a bunch of patients were dying in their sleep. Um, and he's like, let's make it like this boogeyman character that's like killing people in their dreams. And I'm like, you know what? That's a really cool idea, and it really works. And from what I remember, the sequels have some insanely imaginative kills. Especially the third one, I remember having some really cool shit in it. Um, but yeah, like it's kind of hard to talk about a film like this because I have issues with talking about films like this. I don't want to give a lot of things about these films away because I want more people to see these films. I do. And I always think it's cool to, you know, recommend people these films more so than give away things about them. I'm just giving my personal thoughts on it. Um, but yeah, like, would I say this is one of the best horror films of all time? No. Would I say it's one of the most influential? Yes, because there have been so many copycats. From like there was like Boogeyman 2, I think, which was like a R-rated sequel to a PG-13 movie, which was like basically the third Nightmare on Elm Street again. There was like that one from Ted Pryor that was about like Vietnam vets, and I think Grizzly Adams was in it. Um, but fucking no, like insanely influential in the horror in the horror sphere. Yes, very influential. Um, the frickin' the score by Charles Bernstein is iconic. The da 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 is very iconic. The 1 2 Freddy's coming for you. That whole rhyme is insanely iconic as well. Like so many people know it. I heard like back when I was in like middle school, there were kids saying that. And around around that time, that that was also around the time the remake had come out. So maybe that's why, but still, it was cool to it's cool to hear people um talking about that. And uh the kills. I'm not gonna like give away how the kills happen, but there's some really great practical effects on display here, especially with I can at least describe some of them. There's one involving someone basically getting cut in the chest and then going up a wall onto the ceiling and falling back onto a bed because they use like an upside down room. The same thing happened with a character who gets sucked into a bed, and then a huge geyser of blood starts erupting. That was sick. Like there's a lot of really inventive stuff in here. It's not just oh throat slit, whatever. Like this is I don't even know if I'd call it a slasher at this point. It's way too different from every other slasher to the point where I'd just say like psychological horror. But it is also very obviously a movie for teens. Um, Again, the plot is really cool. There's some really well done jump scares. Um, uh, I don't want to give them away, but yeah, like some well timed stuff. Um, Involving Freddy, especially. Um, but yeah, but I do have to talk about some shortcomings. Um, while I do think Nancy is an enjoyable character, again, Heather Langenkamp, there's multiple actors in this film that I think just aren't that great or aren't giving a great performance because I don't think Heather Langenkamp is a bad performer. I've seen her in multiple films. I've seen her in The third film, New Nightmare, I've seen her in the Truth or Dare sci-fi movie. I thought she did a pretty good job there. She's more of a cameo. Um, she was in a TV movie about Tanya Harding called Nancy and Tanya. Tanya and Nancy, The Untold Story, or something like that, where I thought she gave a pretty good performance there. Along with also looking quite a bit like Nancy. I can't remember the character's name. It's funny that she played two Nancys, though. That's really funny. Apparently, when she was cast for that, she just walked in there and they were like, "Okay, you're playing her." But yeah, the acting, I'd say the actors that annoyed me the most would be, I guess, Ronnie Blakely. Like, I think she's trying to do something interesting here, but it's just not coming across in the right way. John Saxon is just kind of wooden in this. Sue Garcia, I think, is trying to do a bad boy thing, but it's not really working. And Heather Langenkamp, again, I can tell she's trying, but there are multiple scenes where it just comes off very stiff. And yeah, Hmm. again, I know it's early actors, but it is still technically a con for me. And also the ending. Everybody who knows the ending, I'm not the biggest fan of the ending, especially given what happens in later films. I'm like, this ending is just kind of out of nowhere, and I'm not a fan of an effect that happens in the ending. If you know the ending, you know what I'm talking about. And but overall, it's still a very enjoyable horror film. Would I say that I was creeped out, or would I say that I was scared by it? No, but I do still enjoy the film quite a bit. I do still. I do. But yeah, that was my review of Nightmare on Elm Street 1984. If you've seen the film, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. If you have any recommendations, put them down there as well. And movie reviewer next door.